Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of SEPA Paranormal Chronicles. Today, I am delighted to have with me Anne Winsper. Anne is a parapsychologist, ghost hunter, and an expert, hopefully, on time slips. Anne, welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah, and we've got two Brits, so if we might have to put subtitles for some of the North Americans. So, Anne, before we go into the subject of time slips, can you just give us a bit of a background and how you really got first involved with paranormal for me, please?
Sure. I'd always been interested, even as a child, really. I think there were two things that made me look at it more seriously. One was an edition of Reader's Digest, which had an article about Arrigo, the surgeon with the rusty blade. He used to do surgery, you know, how they sort of wave their arms about and suddenly they have what appears to be an organ in their hands. And I thought, gosh, that's interesting. Then I started collecting the unexplained. And then I thought, yeah, I've really got to do something with this. I had some premonition experiences as a teenager as well. And that started me off. And I started ghost hunting. I started going to conferences. I was very interested in looking at the academic side of it as well as the ghost hunting side. Then I realised that nobody takes a ghost hunter seriously. I was always shoved in the corner as though that's just a ghost hunter. So I went to university and did a psychology degree looking at electronic voice phenomena. And I thought, this will do it. And they started saying, oh, have you not got a PhD? So I thought, here we go again. So I went and did a PhD, also looking at electronic voice phenomena. So they tend to listen to me now, which is nice. Obviously, I'm a council member on the Society of Psychical Research, and I'm part of their Spontaneous Cases Committee. I'm actually a bit old for sitting in haunted houses all night nowadays. I'm getting on a bit, and I'm a bit creaky, but I still look at apparent paranormal events. And one of my big specialties is time slips,
which we're going to get on with in a minute. But I've just been distracted by a picture behind you because I'm also a fan.
Fantastic.
I've
got the TARDIS blueprints behind me.
Up until last weekend, I'd got all my Doctor Who stuff here, but it's now below the computer on the other side, so you can't see it. But
I notice I've got the same book as you, the Ghosts one.
Yeah, so I saw that in a shop. We was doing a public event, and they'd got some cosplayers that were doing the Ghostbusters, but they wanted the real McCoy. So our team got invited with some of our equipment, and it's one of these kind of like a junk shop kind of things. And they had a book section, and I saw it, and I thought, I don't care how much it costs. I want that book. And because we were there, they said, okay, you can have it for half price. But yeah, that's my pride and place, that book there.
Yes, I must have bought mine about 20 years ago from an actual bookshop. So yes, it's there in amongst all the Harry Prices and stuff.
Oh man, I'm going to come round to your house and take all your Harry Price stuff off you, definitely.
Oh, I've got this whole bottom shelf in front of me, all 6 foot of it, is all the old books. So first edition Phantasms of the Living, first edition Harry Prices, all that kind of stuff. Oh, wow.
Yeah. And for those people that don't know, he was the guy that investigated Borley Rectory, correct?
He was indeed. Very contentious figure, but very worth reading about.
Yeah. When I did my first course on the paranormal and ghosts and hauntings, I had to do a little, not a book, I'm thinking what essay, for want of a better word, and it was on something that you grew up with. And I, being from England, Borley Rectory was always on the top of everybody's radar. Okay, it burnt down in the 1940s, but it was always that key haunted location. But then when I started to go into it, I was really disappointed to find out that there's a lot of hoaxes that were involved, like Harry Price putting like pebbles in his pockets and and stuff like that. And I was traumatized. I was so upset because I loved that location, and I thought, yeah, that'd be something. Yeah, because like I said, I grew up with it. But then to find out that half of it wasn't true, oh man, my world ended. It really did.
I can make you very jealous. Our group was invited to spend a day and a night in one of the bungalows that was built on the site.
Oh, right, wow.
So we did full 24 hours ghost hunting on the site, and we also did a little bit of digging because the bungalow owner said, "Oh yeah, we were doing some work to build a wall, and we found a load of bricks down there, looked like old bricks from a wall." So we said, "Can we have a bit of a dig?" And they went, "Yeah, sure, help yourself." So I may well have an original Borley brick.
Yes, but when people come out with, I'm going to make you more jealous, I'm just going to hit that stop button and go, nope, that's it. That's it. Everything's over with. So you said that when you were younger, and to be fair, I don't think there's much age difference between both of us. How did you kind of get involved with your first ghost hunting and that kind of thing?
There was a local ghost hunting group, and I thought, yeah, I'll join them. I want to get on. I'd done sort of, when I say investigations, looking at things, but not actually sitting in people's houses before that. And obviously speaking to people and finding out their experiences, where I thought I'll join a ghost group and go and do proper ghost hunts. Then after I'd joined, I realised that there was a lot of shenanigans going on in the group. And then Steve Parsons joined. He's another very well-known ghost hunter. And between us, we realised that the group were actually hoaxing a lot of the events.
Oh, wow.
So we thought, we can do this far better than this. And that's when we formed Parascience and started doing it ourselves. So that's when I really got into sitting in haunted buildings. In fact, there was one place we must have gone there for 2 or 3 years, spending time there at different times of the day, night, the year. So we take it quite seriously. We don't do a hit and run.
And you have to, because our team, if we're going to go on an investigation, obviously it's not always possible because you've got these pay-to-play events, as I call them. But if you're going to go to a private residence, you have to do your due diligence. You have to rule out everything that's normal before you start thinking about the paranormal. So we have like black mold detectors, we have carbon monoxide detectors, I've even got like a carpenter's bubble roll thing to make sure that doors are hung properly. Yeah, so we all go through all that kind of technical stuff first. Yeah, and obviously we use EMF readers and such like. But you have to go through all that first to rule out natural phenomena before you can even contemplate. And unless you walk in and like things are floating past you as you walk past, it's like, oh, okay, this is haunted. We're gonna crack straight on it. But yeah, you have to rule out the natural before you can think of anything paranormal.
Absolutely. Although that your last statement does amuse me because the number of times we've walked into places and things have happened in front of us while we've got kit in bags and nobody's looking properly, and it's like, oh yes, that will be a ghost that's just walked past.
Yeah, and same thing happened to us, and I won't tell you too much about the story right now because it's connected to the reason why you're here. But we were setting up for an investigation, and this cabinet, he's got a big TV, and this cabinet just creaked open. And like we'd got no cameras working or anything. And then we spent the next 40 minutes trying to replicate the cabinet door, and we couldn't get it to. reopen. No matter what we did, we're banging the side of it, we're jumping up and down the floor. We could not get it to reopen. And it's like, okay, rule number one, guys. Minute one, at least someone's got to have a camera going.
Yes.
And you always,
yes, we learned that lesson as well.
yeah, you always learn the hard way, don't you? So, going back to what you were saying, you mentioned, I can't remember how you worded it, but spontaneous. Were you referring to spontaneous human combustion when you mentioned that?
No. Although that was one of the things that absolutely fascinated me when I started looking at it. But no, when I use the word spontaneous cases, I just mean things like ghosts, poltergeists, time slips.
Right. Because it's funny, because back in when I lived in the UK, I've only been over here for 13 years. There was a magazine coming out, I think it was weekly, called The Unexplained.
Yeah.
And I've actually found a link to where you can reread all those like editions online. Yeah.
Two flats on the shelf behind me.
Yeah. And spontaneous human combustion was in the first edition. And I thought, oh, I'm going to be experiencing this like every day of my life. And it's like the Bermuda Triangle. Yeah, it's just like nothing happens. It's all, everything disappears. But I thought it was going to be like something that's really common. No, I was very much mistaken.
Yes, I did go through a few years of, I'm a bit scared here just in case I suddenly go up in flames. But
no, that's exactly it. So let's go along to the reason why you're here. We're going to be talking about time slips.
Yes.
So for anybody that doesn't know, what is the definition of a time slip?
For me, it's usually an anomalous experience where someone seems to have moved or travelled into a different historical time. It's usually the past, but it's sometimes the future. It's a bit of a general term, and it's like other paranormal experiences. When you try and pin it down, it gets very difficult to pin it down because there's a bit of a grey area between a haunting and a time slip. So for me, I go by the definition that a haunting is usually a figure or a group of figures, whereas a time slip, the actual scenery around the person changes. So a ghost might appear as a figure in a location, but in a time slip, the whole location and all the people in it seem to be solid, but from a completely different time. People can also interact with figures in a time slip, and there are reports, including one that I investigated, of objects being brought back from these time slips.
I love the concept of walking down a road or walking down a lane, and history basically not history changes, but your environment changes to something in the past. And it's sort of like, what can cause that? It's something that, you could walk down this lane 20 times and nothing happens, and then on one occasion everything changes. So how would you explain the fact that you can go down a lane 20 times, nothing happens, and then on this one occasion everything changes?
Well, unfortunately, it's one of the great unknowns, isn't it? What causes a time slip? So what I tend to think, and it might not be true, is that some of the cases are just hallucinations. When I say hallucinations, I don't mean somebody's having a mental event. It's just something that can happen to any of us. Our view on reality isn't quite as grounded as we like to think it is. Some people have been to an area and know the area, and people are sometimes daydreaming when they go into these events. But the fact that people can interact with other people, there are reports of people going to shops and buying things. There are reports of people staying overnight in buildings that a few days later aren't there anymore. I think it's got to be more physical, and we need to start looking into things like parallel universes and that kind of idea. Because there's something physical going on.
Yeah.
It's not just something nebulous, it's physical and there at the time.
That's it. And if even if you've got a vivid imagination, you're not going to be walking down a street, a lane, or whatever, interact with somebody from a different time, and like you just said, purchase things or stay over. That's not really how the mind works to that extent. Yes, you can have a dream, when you're asleep, but you tend to forget that as soon as you wake up, or within a few minutes if you're waking up. But with time slips, from what I've read, people tend are really clear in what they've seen, who they've spoke to, what they've done. So there's got to be more into it than just, somebody was daydreaming or someone's got a vivid imagination.
Absolutely. I mean, there's one case that I investigated very closely. It was part of a really big investigation that included ghosts and poltergeist type phenomena and a saint or somebody who a group of people were trying to make a saint. It was a very complicated and fascinating case, but one small part of it, the couple involved were trying to get hold of a printing die. So they found a leaflet with the address of the printers. So they went to the address, and it was a bit odd. It was in Liverpool, on the outskirts of Liverpool. When they got to the house, the area was under redevelopment. So if there was only this one house left standing. When they got there, a man appeared and he said, I've been expecting you. You've come for the printing dies, which was a bit odd because obviously they hadn't contacted him beforehand. Then he handed over this parcel and they said, thank you very much. And the man had disappeared. So they got back into the car and said that was really strange, but they drove home. And as they drove home, the packaging that was around this printing die started collapsing, like it was really old, like paper just starts disintegrating and string disintegrates. So on the following Monday, the man was back at work and he said to one of his friends, I was round your area the other day in this particular road. And the man laughed at him and said, are you seeing things? And he started joking with all his workmates, saying, don't talk to him. He sees things. He went to a house that isn't there. So he said, okay, on the way home, I'll get a lift with you and we'll go the same way and I'll show you the house that we went to. And of course, when they got there was nothing there. The whole area had been demolished about 5 years previously.
That's so crazy.
I've actually held that printing die as well. And something even more peculiar, the couple, after the man died, the lady said to us, have you got that printing die? Because I'd like it back. And I said, well, we never actually took it, held it in the house, but it was too valuable for us to take. And after the man died, the printing die just vanished. It's never been seen again.
That's ridiculous.
So... If I hadn't been involved and seen it and spoken to this lovely old couple who didn't have a lying bone in their body, then I just wouldn't have believed. If you told me that story, I'd say, nah, it's a load of rubbish. He's making it up.
Yeah, exactly.
I absolutely guarantee you it's a true story.
And you kind of answered that question already, but I'm going to see if we can get a little bit more out of it. You mentioned about the printing die that as they were coming home, the wrapping was deteriorating. Has there been other occurrences where people have bought stuff, and when they've got it back, it's either in a more like dishevelled case where it's gone through time, or is it still as new as what it was when they purchased it from this time slip location?
It entirely depends. There have been other cases, not ones that I've investigated personally, but other documented ones where people have had things, envelope things, start to look suddenly really old. But then there's other things. I can never remember this guy's name. Here we go. Ray Allen. Do you remember Ray Allen, the TV entertainer? He had a puppet.
Yeah,
that's one.
Lord Charles,
Lord Charles, yes. So he went to a shop. He was on tour and he went to a shop with one of his friends to get some cigarettes. Bought the cigarettes, went back to the hotel. The next day said, I think I need some more cigarettes. I'll just nip to the shop again. And there was no shop there. And he did speak to one of the neighbouring shops, and there had been a shop there, and the woman who served him fitted the description of the lady who used to work there but was now deceased.
Wow. And it's, there's no way that that's vivid imagination. Yeah, if you're bringing something away from it, it can't be imagination. And I'll jump in by, like I said at the beginning about the story that I've got. We went to do an investigation at a place called the Braylock Inn in New York State. And it's an oldie worldy hotel. You walk in there and it's got the wooden beams and all this, and it's a beautiful location. They've had reports of 2 rooms being haunted, so we rented both the rooms. And it's got this nice big sweeping staircase to go up to the rooms. And we were talking to the owner, and we actually interviewed her. And she said a few months previous, a couple came walking down the stairs. At the bottom of the stairs, there was a big black door. And this couple said, there's a black tie dinner and dance going on. They were looking for the owner. So, the owner's probably at the event. We'll come back down later. But the door was open. They could see people in, like I say, jacket, shirt and tie. And they just turned around and went back upstairs. Came down a few hours later. The door was closed. They saw the owner. And so they're going like, how was the event? And she goes like, what event? Well, the dinner and dance that we saw through this black door. It's like, this black door's been sealed for like 50 years. And if you walk a little bit further down the corridor and walk into the dining room, you can actually double back on yourself. And the black door is now part of the wall of the opened up dining room. But somebody actually saw it open and an event, and that's happened twice in that location.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I want that to happen to me. Because I now know what I know, if I feel that that's happening, it's like, notebook, okay, I'm going to start writing stuff down just to see what I can remember.
Yeah, I may have had one myself. We were staying, my husband and I, we were staying in a 's-Hertogenbosch in the Netherlands. We'd gone there because it was the birthplace of Hieronymus Bosch, the painter who does all the weird paintings. And they gathered nearly all of his remaining paintings together, and they had trails with big statues of figures from the Garden of Earthly Delights and stuff. And there was lots and lots of events on, and we were actually staying just down from Bosch's house on the town hall square. We were right on the main square. And we'd had breakfast one day, gone back up to our room, and we were on the top floor of the hotel. And we only had little windows because it was the top floor. But I was sort of peeking out of the window, and we were saying, what are we going to do today? Where should we go? And I heard the sound of a parade. Now, I will do anything for a parade. If I can be in a parade, I will be there in costume. If not, I will go down and watch it. So, and then I saw there was a number of side streets, and from one of the side streets, I saw a parade coming down. And there was people at the front playing musical instruments, and there was a banner, and there was a crowd of people coming down behind them. And I said to my husband, "A parade! There's a parade! I've got to go to the parade." So we ran out of the room into the lift. The lift was there, took us straight down. We ran out of the lift into the square, and there was nothing. I said, "Well, I don't think they can have moved out of the square in the time it took us to come down, because it's a parade. They're not running at top speed." And he said, "Well, maybe you got the wrong street or something." So we looked down all the side streets, and there was nothing, absolutely nothing. Now, when I'd been upstairs and I saw it, I put my phone at the window and took a photo, and that photo never came out on my phone.
That's very strange. So, how can you explain that? It's weird. So, if you watch a TV show and they probably more relate to it as being time travel, or they don't kind of refer to them as time slips, and you get the kind of the atmosphere changing, it gets foggy or whatever. Do you find that in the people that you've interviewed that there's been that kind of scenario before they go into their time slip, or is it just a case of modern time history?
Again, it entirely depends. A number of witnesses have described how sounds go really quiet and the light seems to dim. And I thought for a while, we're onto something here. This seems to be something that defines a time slip. But then there's been others where people haven't noticed anything at all different. So it entirely depends on the time slip. There was one, I really got onto time slips because there's an area in Liverpool, a street called Bold Street, and we were getting report after report after report of time slips from this one single place. So I was doing a radio show at the time for the BBC, local radio. So we asked for people to phone in with their experiences, and we started getting so many. And there was one area at the bottom of the street where it seemed to be happening regularly. So one of the typical ones from there, a lady had gone out for a lunch, sat down on a bench. She described how the light seemed to go dim and the sound seemed to go dim. Man sat on the bench next to her. So they just started chatting like you do with a stranger. You're like, "Oh, look at the weather," and "Oh, aren't there a lot of people?" That kind of thing. And she did say that he appeared to be wearing what seemed to be old-fashioned clothes. She had a sandwich and there was a bin right next to her. So she just turned slightly, put a sandwich wrapper in the bin, turned back, and he'd vanished, nowhere to be seen. And the light came back and the sounds came back. So that's one. But then slightly further over in Liverpool, Castle Street, going up towards the town hall, there were two ladies who told me about they didn't know the city at the time, but they'd gone to meet their friend who was working at a solicitor's office. So they asked directions when they got to the bottom of the street, and they were told, "Just go straight up and turn right." And it was raining, so they had a brolly up. So they started walking up the street, and they said everyone seemed to be dressed in suits and bowler hats, and they said, "Gosh, this is a bit weird."
As you do.
We didn't have people still dressed like that, even though it's the business area, but they thought, never mind. So they actually carried on walking up the middle of the road, and it was all cobbles. They got to the top, turned right, met their friend, and went off for lunch. And they said, "Oh, it's a bit odd the way people dress nowadays." And the friend, of course, said, "Don't be stupid, no one dresses like that." Now, the road they walked up at the time was actually a tarmacked road, and not only that, there was traffic on it. There were buses going up and down, there were cars and taxis going up and down. How did they manage to walk up the middle of a cobbled road without getting run over?
That's weird. So out of all these people that you've interviewed, and we're going to go into some locations, even though you've mentioned Liverpool already. That was going to be my next part.
Sorry.
Okay, 100 lines. I must not interrupt.
I must.
But have you noticed that people have actually lost time themselves, or has there been no time lost? What's the kind of ratio?
For those events, there doesn't seem to be any time lost at all. It all seems to happen in real time. However, there are different kind of what I still call time slips, where time itself does seem to do odd things. But we can move on to those if you like. But for these time slips we've been talking about, everything seems to happen in the time you would expect it to happen. It's not like somebody walks onto a street and suddenly reappears. However, I do have a case of that happening.
Quick note to myself, ask her about this in a second. Yeah. So let's go back to your previous sentence about time changing and time stopping. Let's elaborate on that.
So, gosh, where do you want me to start? In people suddenly reappearing, or
you're the expert.
Okay. So I call these experiences. There's the one you've made a note of, which I'll tell you about in a minute, but the others are disappearing cars and reappearing people. Now, these are things that I think are happening on a day-to-day basis, but people just aren't noticing them. I think they're happening a lot more often. So the disappearing cars, again, there's certain areas. There's one area in America, which I can't remember off the top of my head where it is now, but this has been reported a lot by commercial drivers as well as just domestic drivers. So you'll be driving along, someone will come up behind you, indicate to overtake, pull out to overtake you, you check over your shoulder and they've vanished.
Wow.
The other one is you're driving down a road and you can see someone coming towards you, and then you go round a bend and they've vanished. And these seem to be really common. I really think they're happening more often than people realise. And the other one, the reappearing people. So this will be when you're just walking through the shops or down the road and you see someone quite distinctive coming towards you. So you notice them and they walk past. And a few minutes later, they come walking towards you again. And you think, okay, how did they do that?
Yeah.
There's no way they could have done that. Now that, I think, has happened to me, and I did notice it at the time as being really strange. But it was actually somebody on a push bike, one of these middle-aged men in Lycra. So I was stuck behind him on a country lane. I actually had Steve in the car with me, and we were stuck behind him for ages, getting really frustrated. So I know exactly what he looked like from behind. Then as we overtook him, Steve leaned out of the window and shouted something at him, which I was very cross about, and said, "Don't you ever dare do that again in my car," in case somebody reports it. But because he'd stuck his head out the window, he saw the front of the guy as well. So we carried on, crossed a roundabout, turned right, went down another country road, and he was in front of us again. Now, I know those roads like the back of my hand, and there is no way he could have got in front of us. So he either had an identical twin who was riding 2 miles in front of him, or something a bit strange happened that day.
But it's funny how we mentioned earlier that we're both Doctor Who fans, because there was a Doctor Who episode that involved a time slip with Christopher Eccleston.
Yes.
When what's her name? Billy Piper character. Can't remember what. When her father got killed. Yeah, that's it, Rose. When her father got killed, and that would be the perfect example of a time slip. So it's you've got it actually on TV in front of you of how a time slip would actually interact with normal life.
Yes.
But let's go on to some of the locations, because you mentioned Bold Street in Liverpool, and if you Google time slips, Bold Street is one of the first ones that always comes up. So why do you think that Bold Street is such a important location for time slips, if important is the right word?
There's a few things to unpick here, and I've got to be very careful what I say. So the first thing is, we tried to investigate and we haven't come up with any rational explanation as to why there are more time slips in that particular area. We came up with a lot of theories. We came up with the theory that it might be something to do with the Underground Railway. We dismissed that theory, but it got picked up by people on the internet, and people now bandy it round as if it's an actual proper ironclad theory, but it isn't. We looked at it, we dismissed it. The other thing that sort of interferes in it is there's a local author who writes about the paranormal, who embellishes. Is that a good word?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
So, yes. So it's sometimes difficult to unpick the fact from the fiction. But there certainly does seem to be one area where I've had more reports given to me, and that is this particular spot in Bold Street. Now, I should say I've been up and down Bold Street hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times every time I go shopping in Liverpool, and nothing has ever happened to me. And it's a lot more difficult nowadays because people dress how they want to dress now a lot more, which is great, but it means you're far more likely to see a 1920s character or a 1940s character, particularly walking down the street, and it could well just be somebody who dresses like that normally. I live just outside Chester, and that's a nightmare because it's full of Roman centurions and people in hunting gear, and there was a whole load of Regency ladies there yesterday. So every time we walk past one, my husband goes, "Time slip." I'm fairly sure it isn't.
Yeah. Do you go up to them and start pinching them to see if they're real? So one of the places that's not far from me is Gettysburg in Pennsylvania. When I say not far, it's about an 8-hour drive. So it's far enough. But I do find that places like that, they don't just encounter a ghost in the description that we provided earlier. They do kind of get the environment changing as well. So would you class that as a time slip with the characters involved, or would you just count it as a residual energy where the ghost has brought some of the surroundings with them?
Generally, I would class that more as a haunting. Obviously, we have very similar in Culloden in Scotland.
Yeah.
That's a incredible place. As soon as you walk on, you can feel the atmosphere. I took my son when he was 15 and he had his friend with him, and they were typical teenagers. They were going, "Oh, I don't want to do this." And they walked on the battlefield and went silent and went, "This is just something completely different." But so even though there's an atmosphere and you see a whole scene, it's not interactive. You're not
Yeah.
actually part of it and interacting with those people. So I would class that as a haunting rather than a time slip. I mean, that's only my definition.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
open
And
to argue.
that's it. And that would make sense because, like you say, the time slip definition is, most of the time physical interaction with your surroundings rather than just seeing, a platoon of soldiers or whatever walking past.
I mean, a lot of the time, people don't even know they've had a time slip till later. It's always later when they go back somewhere and go, hang on a minute, where's the place I was in last week? And it's just not there anymore.
Yeah. But somewhere like Bold Street, I've not been to Liverpool, so I can't really say. But I imagine in this day and age, there's a lot of security cameras, and because they're outside a lot of shops nowadays for safety reasons. I wonder if someone experiences a time slip on, let's just say, Bold Street, that if it's a personal experience or it's recorded on any of these security cameras.
At the end of every talk I do, I always say, if you have an experience, tell me straight away so we can get you to get the CCTV. Because obviously I can't ask for the CCTV because of GDPR, but the person who's in it can ask for it. So that's always been my plea, but we've never managed to get that to happen, unfortunately.
Yeah, because when you're paranormal investigating, and my job over here includes a lot of access control and CCTV cameras and stuff like that. So the footage is absolutely everywhere. But I think if someone's experiencing a time slip, they're going to be more confused and like, what the hell's going on kind of thing, rather than worried about, oh, I must go and get a camera.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, some of the people who've spoken to me, they had an experience 50 years ago and they've never told anyone else because they were too afraid that people would just say, oh, you had a breakdown or something. So, like you say, some people will come straight to you and go, something really weird happened, but a lot of people won't. I think if you have a genuine experience, it's something. It feels quite fundamental if you understand what I mean by that. So your first thought isn't, oh, I'll get proof. It's, I'm just going to try and rationalise this in my brain for a year or so.
Yeah, and it's the same as if you see a spirit, if you hear one. I had an experience just before Christmas where I was at a haunted location, and I had felt the sensation of my hand being held. So your rational head goes, was it cobwebs? Was it a breeze? Was it X, Y, and Z? But then you also think, well, hang on a minute, am I going nuts? Am I But in this day and age, there's more people that are coming out and speaking about it. You're getting more people speaking about UFOs, about Bigfoot, and paranormal experiences. We go to conventions and people go, "Let me tell you the time when." So more people are speaking about it now, but there's still in the back of the mind, if you're a rational human being, you're going to go, "I'm not telling anybody because they're going to put me in a straitjacket."
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
it's funny you should mention UFOs there, because there may well be some crossover. Some of the reports aren't of people going somewhere different. They're just of them losing time or gaining time. One example, somebody got in touch. He was a commercial truck driver, and he stopped. It was an overnight stop. He stopped overnight at a stop he knew very well, and there was I guess we'd call it a mountain, but over in America they call them hills because everything over there is bigger than over here.
Exactly.
And there was a trail, and he thought, well, I'll go for a walk. It's a nice day. And he walked up, had a cigarette, and then as he was walking down, he met one of the rangers coming up who said, gosh, you've been up there early this morning. And he was like, no, I haven't. It's the afternoon. And he'd walked up to the top and walked back down again. But when he walked up, it was the afternoon. And when he walked back down, it was the following morning.
Yeah. How can you answer that?
And the other one that I did want to tell you, the one that I said make a note of, this was very similar. This was actually on a ghost hunt we did, but it was outside at a church, and it's a church in the middle of the Cheshire countryside, so there's nothing around, but there's tales of the devil carriage coming up the drive and stuff. But it's a very unusual place. Every time we've been there, it's felt like a place out of time. It's been there 1,000 years on the site. There's been a church of some form or another there. And because there's none of the modern day around it, it just feels different. But there's been reports of sounds coming from inside the church when it's empty. So we'd decided we'd walk round one side of the church, it was actually a tape recorder, an old tape recorder, put the recorder down and start it playing and see if it would pick up any of these sounds of music from the church. So press play on the recorder. Steve was there. He lit a cigarette, walked back round the side of the church. He'd just about finished his cigarette, so it was only a couple of minutes, and it started to rain. Went back round, stopped the tape, got back in the car because there was thunder and lightning and rain and all sorts. Then one of the other guys said, well, put the tape in anyway. I want to see if there's any EVP or anything on it. So played the tape, and it was just the sounds that you'd expect to hear. There was birds singing and the wind in the trees, but it went on for about 20 minutes. Right, well, that's really weird because we only recorded for 2. So that obviously the tape was examined afterwards and making sure it was the right tape and it wasn't stretched and all the rest of it. But we've never managed to explain why we recorded 28 minutes of sound when it was only recording for 2. But at the same church, we had a child with us who was getting a bit fed up being there. So she was told, run around the church, see how long it takes you. So she ran to that corner of the church and instantaneously reappeared at this corner of the church. It was like, okay, that was a bit strange. Run round the church again. And she ran round it again, but it took the amount of time you'd expect the second time. We said, well, was there anything a bit odd when you ran round the first time? And she went, no, just ran round the church. Like, okay, that was very strange.
Yeah, and it's not something that you can immediately explain. It's like you said, that was weird. So
it's one of those things all you can do is file it. You can't reproduce it.
That's it. And yeah, out of all the investigations we've done, we never unless we see something literally like floating past in front of you and you got it on video. It's never that was a spirit, that was a ghost. It's always unexplained. Unfortunately, that pile's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So out of all the investigations that you've done with regard to time slips, apart from the ones we mentioned, are there any that really, if you get asked the question, what's your favourite or which one stands out the most, do you have any particular that really, you are completely flummoxed over or sort of like find interesting?
There's one that I still haven't quite got my head round. It's another, just sounds like a normal time slip, but it happened not far from here on the Wirral, which is the other side of the Mersey from
Yeah.
Liverpool. And the lady had just moved there, and she decided to take her daughter out for a walk in the pushchair and have a look at the surrounding area. And she went down a lane, and she said it was cobbled lane, lots of little cottages down the side. She said it was really nice. She went past one house, and there was a child who seemed to be wearing quite old-fashioned clothes, who looked at her a bit strangely and then ran back into the house. And she said she could actually feel the heat coming from the house as the door was opened. There was a man standing in his garden who said good morning to her, and she said good morning back. There was a pile of rubble on the side of the road, like something had collapsed, but it had been there a while. But she said all these beautiful cottages, and there were flower beds and flowers, and she only spoke to the man and the girl, I think. Then as they got down to the bottom of the road, there was the 5-bar gate, and beyond the 5-bar gate was rolling fields. So she decided to turn around and go back home. And a couple of months later, her mother came to visit, and she said, oh, let's go out for a walk. I had a lovely walk down this old cobbled road. I'll take you there. And they went there, and of course it was a tarmacked road, and the cottages weren't there anymore. And when they got to the bottom of the road where the 5-bar gate had been, it was a full housing estate. Now, when I started looking into the history, there had been a windmill on that site, but it had collapsed in a storm and left the pile of rubble on the side of the road. However, that was at a different time period to when the cottages were there. So the cottages had been there exactly as she described them, and there had been a windmill where she described this pile of rubble, but they were from different times.
Wow.
So that one really intrigued me, because she was like she almost had a double time slip.
Yeah. That is, yeah, that would blow your mind for sure. So while you were telling me that story, something came into my mind. You've already mentioned that people in our time have interacted with people in the time slip. Have you actually had any occurrences where somebody in the time slip has said to the person that, like, you're wearing strange clothes, or it's been kind of like the opposite? The person in the time slip's noticing the time traveler, so to speak.
There's been a few where people have said, gosh, they're looking a bit odd, and the people have looked back at them. Nobody's ever said anything to them, but they've looked back at them sort of a bit, oh, they look a bit strange. So what's frustrating for me is that I can't find anything in the literature. I would expect somewhere someone to have written, oh, I had a report from somebody who said they saw these strangely dressed people walking down the street, but I've never found a corresponding account from years ago to match up, which is frustrating. But certainly the people in the time slip do seem to be reacting to the people who are having the time slip.
Interesting. And have you recorded or noticed if there's any similar time periods that occur in the time slip, or is it random periods of time where one person could be walking through a Roman camp, or there's a vast difference in time periods?
It's very difficult to tell with time periods, because many years ago I tried to do a small replication of Phantasms of the Living, I got quite a lot of answers back, but I've lost them now on an old hard drive, unfortunately. But one of the questions was, if you've seen a figure, what period of history were they from? And people are very, very bad at recognising the dress of historical people. So if somebody's wearing a long robe, they're a monk, so it's very difficult to say if there's a specific time period because people are quite bad at recognising what time period dress is from. But they do seem to be mostly within the last 200 years, I'd say.
Right.
Although one of my friends had an experience that I still don't know whether to classify it as a ghost or a time slip. I'm tending more towards ghost now, but he ended up in the middle of a load of Roman soldiers who were walking down the road.
So like, okay.
He said he could smell the leather of their armour, and he could smell the horses and the breath from the horses. He said it was completely interactive.
Wow, that's crazy. And it's a similar kind of thing that we've just been talking about, where people never see ghosts of dinosaurs, do they? So, Anne, we are coming towards the end, but I do have one more question for you. Has there been any, apart from Ray Allen, has there been any celebrity time slips of what we're aware of?
Yes, somebody reported one, and I can't remember who it was.
Not Ray Allen.
Not Ray Allen. His was in the paper. His was in the newspaper. That was a genuine. I'm sure there was somebody else recently famous who reported one. No, I'm going to have to pass on that one. Sorry.
Well, I'm getting my own back. I've caught you out right at the very end.
The thing is, I know that there was one. I remember someone saying to me, "Oh, did you see such and such?" saying they had a time slip, and I just cannot for the life of me remember who it was.
You do realise that as soon as we
happens in old age, you do
realise that as soon as we stop recording, you're going to remember this, aren't you?
Of course I am. Of course,
it's that person.
Damn! I wish I'd said.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and it's a subject that I love talking about because I'm fascinated with my history. I've got all autographs from the Sharp TV series here and behind the screen. But I love my history, and for time slips to be involved with the paranormal, I think it's absolutely fascinating. But for now, thank you for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. And if you remember, you must let me know who that person was.
I will do. Thank you for inviting me.
You're most welcome. You have a great rest of the day. Take care.
Thank you.